Thanks for the intro, Bill. That was lovely. Thanks for having me over. Hi, everybody. Anybody that's seen me speak before, I'm sorry, I've got like 3 gags and I say them every single time, every presentation, so you hear the same 3 gags. It's great to be back in Auckland. I bloody love coming to New Zealand. I'd like to take back your Prime Minister, if that's all right. We've got currently a race going on between 2 mediocre white men, because, you know, they're always the best choice, aren't they? Speaking of mediocre white men, Austin Maynard Architects. We okay?
I was just looking at the volume.
Is this thing working? I don't know. Is this the thing I'm talking into, or that thing?
It's that, so in there.
Testing.
Yeah.
Is that okay? You hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Great. All right.
I might just dim the lights a little bit as well. Who would have thought I'm a professional? So. Extra quality.
Awesome. All right, so we're all in this together, really, in terms of housing affordability. You've probably all seen the stats. In terms of the Housing Affordability Index, 5.1 of the median income is considered, basically an index of 5.1 means that median income in the area, that's how much you have to pay, 5.1 times of your annual income to pay for a house where you live. So under the index, that's considered severely unaffordable. Now when you look at Auckland, Melbourne and Sydney, we're all, 9.6, 10, 12.2, we're all severely unaffordable twice over. We're fucked twice over, basically, especially if you're a millennial. Like, if you're a millennial, there's pretty much zero access to housing without your parents helping you out, which is a tragedy. And you've probably got similar news headlines. The other compounding factor that we've got in Australia is that we've got the world's biggest houses now, which is surprising and shocking. And really, we've sort of got this culture that seems to be more and more trying to privatise everything, have one of everything. Build your fences higher, look inward, buy a pool, get a tennis court if you can. And obviously that's problematic in terms of housing affordability, in terms of space, because it obviously leads to urban sprawl, but also in terms of community. So we dissect ourselves into these individuals separated from each other. Housing affordability, even though I'm not sure what it's like here, but there's falling house prices in Australia, but where people want to live, they're actually pretty static. Housing affordability is still just as much of a problem. Melbourne is flat. I'm originally from Tassie, so it was quite surprising, never being able to get any elevation unless you go up a tall building in Melbourne. But Melbourne's flat and there's no real topography constraining it, so urban sprawl is just out of control, building right out into our food belts and getting towards arid areas. And homelessness is on the rise, and it's stark. You see it on the street. It is really surprising over the last few years how many people are on the streets, and they typically represent about 6% of homelessness in that area, are the people you actually see on the street. In Melbourne itself, our problem is that we have to house about 100,000 new Melburnians every year for the next 30 years, and there is no policy in place. There's no solution in place for that. And because of that, developers have been able to exploit the situation to either buy up paddocks and just build horizontal urban sprawl where everybody has their own driveway and they drive into their garage, close the door and never see anybody in the way. They have to drive 2 kilometres to go get a litre of milk. Or use it to exploit sites to maximise yield on a site, saying they're dealing with housing affordability when in fact they're simply building commodities, dog boxes. And fundamentally those solutions have left us with a broken system that is leaving many people, and plus things like negative gearing as well. You're more incentivised in Australia to buy your 7th house than you are to buy your 1st house. It's ridiculous. And then you look at so developers over the last couple of decades have gone to government and they've said, we've got this, just let us build taller and we'll just make more houses. It's easy. And when you look at the outcome of that on South Bank, you end up with 6 levels of car parking, very little public interface, lots of 7-Elevens and things like that, the ground level, really tiny spaces, incredibly poor livability, and around 85% of those are sold to investors, and the vast majority of those investors are overseas investors that bought off the plan and have never even seen the apartment they bought. They bought a commodity. What statistically provides the greatest return? It's a 2-bedroom apartment, 2-bathroom with a car park. That's a commodity decision. Nobody is asking the people living in these buildings what they actually want from their housing. They're being left out of the equation. And what's more is within this housing as well, on average, people are staying there about 11 months. So how do you actually build and foster a community if you've constantly got this, this rotating community around you? And so Nightingale Housing is sort of had this spotlight on it. Like, look at these people that are thinking outside the norm to create something innovative and new. And the reality is that that's not true at all. We are cut and pasting well-worn solutions that have been around for many, many decades in Europe and other places in the world. Build 6 or 7 stories high, 5 or 6 stories high, no higher than that because you're living in the clouds. Get good passive surveillance to the street, try and really connect to the ground plane so you get great community spaces outside. It's not that fucking hard. And so all throughout the world you see these great solutions. So we sort of came to the conclusion that, and when I say we, this is a bunch of Melbourne architects. So Breathe started it, ourselves, 6 Degrees, Kennedy Nolan, Claire Cousins. Instead of being competitors with each other, we just basically said, let's be stronger together. Good old left-wing politics. Let's actually try and tackle this together. Somebody should fix this, and we're a bunch of somebodies, hopefully. But what we really quickly realised was individually we were off trying these different things. I spent a lot of time with prefab, thinking if we can build cheaper, we'll provide cheaper housing. That's not the case. We'll provide a cheaper building solution that will then be sold at maximum yield on the open market. And who gets that return in between there? It's the developer. We're not actually lowering housing prices. So we realised that good design is only part of the equation, and most of those solutions have been solved. They've already been solved for us. The decision makers are the developers, and they're the ones that set the goalposts. And that a property developer, I'm not trying to kick my intent is not to kick the hell out of property development. These are business people. That's primarily their purpose. So they're acting within that mandate. That's how we make money. That's how we have a healthy economy, is by producing and selling commodities. The problem is that housing should not be deemed a commodity. It's actually a human right, access to housing. But because of our legislation, we've allowed business people to come along and produce these commodities rather than producing housing. A developer is a business person, not a housing provider. And sadly, in Australia, we don't have government, like throughout Europe, as happens throughout Europe, providing housing where it's needed. So we've had to do it ourselves. But I've opted out. So I started my practice in 2002 and have been approached by developers time and time again. And I've just said, I know that medium density housing is the solution to Melbourne's housing needs, but I'm not doing it. I'm not going to work for them because you hear the horror stories over and over again. Your fee gets compressed. The first couple of times I was really excited, and then it was obvious that they said that they only wanted 2 things from me. One, brand. They want to use our brand. They knew that we had a lot of people that couldn't afford one of our single residential houses, but they could actually probably afford an apartment that's branded Austin Maynard Architects. And secondly, and so at first I was like, brilliant, I've got all these cool ideas about how we can create really great community-centred sustainable housing. And they're like, sweetie, we don't need that from you. We've got our spreadsheets that show our profitability. We know what works. We've got our plans already, sorted out. What we need from you is to design the outside. Make it really pretty on the outside, darling. Because that's what you love. You're an architect, make it pretty. And I just thought, well, fuck it. I'm not actually interested if what this is a branding exercise rather than sincerely trying to deal with good quality housing. So we opted out for years. This is a Nightingale graph. We aim to produce housing that's environmentally, socially and financially sustainable. Triple bottom line development. They all have equal importance. It's not a charity. It's still making a profit within the capitalist system. But what it's not doing is minimising what we need to do under our legislative requirements to tick the boxes of sustainability and of livability and maximise our returns wherever possible. James Legge from 6 Degrees sort of describes this as just turning capitalism down from 11. You know, just making it, you know, still making a profit but not being exploitative. But if you'll indulge, I've got a million slides, I'm going to skip a whole heap of stuff. But I actually want to take a couple of steps back because I want to show you some of the ideas that we've been working with over the last decade or so that I always thought would translate really well to medium density housing, and developers have seen no value in whatsoever, yet we keep on getting the average punter coming to us, constantly getting phone calls, can you do in my house because I want these community-orientated sustainability ideas in there. And then they see the cost of building and realise they can't afford it, and it's a tragedy. So Fitzroy is where my office is, but I'm originally from Tassie, from Launceston. That photo is about a week old. That's how far behind Tassie is. And while I was growing up, the birth of the first Greens political party happened while the fight for the Gordon River was happening. And I was just a little kid, but in the background, all of this left-wing politics was happening that was about our responsibility as custodians to the earth. And I think for our generation, a lot of that seeped in. And probably for the generation of New Zealanders too, with the stance taken on nuclear weapons and the like. You know, there was sort of this, I guess, embedded activism that would happen from a very early age for a lot of Tasmanians. It didn't happen in other places in Australia. When I studied, I grabbed this quote, and I've loved this forever. Architecture is a discipline where it is impossible to escape values. It's radically value-laden. It is possible that you can become an architect and see it as somewhat autonomous and not as a political act, which is incredibly naive. I try to make students aware of the radical political, cultural, social nature of our work and how it's impossible to escape those responsibilities. By building walls, putting apertures that are controlled, doors with locks on it, we actually are creating violent spaces that control people. You know, we're the authors of politically laden territory. Who is paying us to do that, and what is their agenda? So when I started my practice, I decided what I was going to do was try to do half built work that was paid, and then the other half was polemical work, were these fictions based in politics that I thought was important because I was pretty disenfranchised. I just thought some of these ideas were never going to happen. So I might as well spend some time creating paper architecture. And I did that for a decade before I really changed my tune, because what I used to say was, there's only so much I can do, especially when I started my practice at 27. You know, I was a young punter that didn't have much push, so I was always going to be a bit of a slave to the social, economic and cultural issues around me, but also the client at the end of the day calls the shots. So I thought it was going to be really good to do polemical work where I take some problem in society and then play with it in a really elastic way. I've completely changed my tune now, and that's what Nightingale's about. It's actually taking all of these things that I was seeing as constraints and saying, let's roll up our sleeves and reinvent this stuff. Let's redesign that system. And it's turned out to be frighteningly, stressfully hard, but we're doing it anyway. But ideas like this, New Australian Parliament, where you get the lefties on one side and right-wing nutters on the other, and they're shoving the building, denying the politicians from sunlight and natural air every time they show it. Or a building for a site where there was this really wasted laneway space, and this was the idea that you could just tip a building over, get a permit for one type of building and then tip it over and make it really livable, and then if council comes back to check out if it's still compliant, you just quickly stack it back up, put it back out, it wasn't me. Or using transport infrastructure to try and flatten out the sort of the economics of a apartment building. So if you're up the top and you face north, it's probably worth more than the lower apartments. So using a container stacker to constantly relocate your home. So, you know, you might be ground floor facing south one day, but you come home from work and you go, where the fuck is my house? And then, oh shit, look at this, I've got the view in the sun, this is awesome. Oh, this one's not really polemical. I almost pulled this one off. There was a number of sites, you've probably got that here as well, where development often takes so long and it goes to a tribunal and you end up with these dead parts of the city, these empty building sites just cordoned off. This was the idea that we'd work with Melbourne City Council to actually roll out these playgrounds in these building sites, well, empty sites, until a building got built. You know, yeah. Tiny houses are coming up. I don't know who I'm going to offend, but I played a lot with tiny houses and realised they're completely unethical. We should be providing good quality houses for people, not requiring them to change the way that they live to fit in a tiny little dog box. Anyway, there's a dog box. So, the problems. So, in our building work, a lot of them being single residential, we've played with these ideas that are experiments in much bigger things. So not just building a single, or not just thinking about our client, but thinking about the ramifications of that building. House is an example of that, where a son and a father owned 2 terraces next to each other, and they decided to develop across both of them. And what we decided to do was that if Melbourne's suffering from sprawl and everybody spatially is thinking very horizontally in their houses, what if we borrow a typology from a different location? So, say Tokyo, where you stack buildings, you think vertically, you don't think horizontally. And then maybe where we have this abundance of space in Australia, we can actually have much more outdoor space, because currently in Melbourne, outdoor space is really under siege as people try to build bigger and bigger houses. So this is the idea that maybe we'll cut and paste that typology and we'll throw it on its head, and then you have a different association to outdoor space than you would have had traditionally in Australia. And so instead of doing something big with this sacrificed outdoor space, you have much more outdoor space, but also you start to share these spaces. And this is something that's happened a lot in our work, and we really have to work with clients. At the end of the day, I'm not pushy, like I'll just give clients enough rope. But ideas like this, these are 2 different dwellings, but the fence can actually slide away, but also the gate can slide away. And this is a dirty great car park on this side. And the idea that you can actually open out to the car park, the master bedroom looks into the car park, and they're like, why the hell are you doing this? And I was saying, because this is like one of the last 2 sites in this area where they haven't built concrete walls to turn away from this car park, but with the way that transport's evolving, and we'll probably all have automated cars, or we'll have automated cars picking us up and car ownership will be dead, this car park could become a park in the future. So you could be part of that catalyst if you actually engage with the park. Oh, there's too much to talk about. I'm going to keep going. But yeah, you can see where these spaces, this is another big thing in our work, is being alone together. Most people are surprised I'm actually an introvert. I like to just hide away and read and play, and every now and then come out and be loud and then run away again. And that's how we design our buildings. You can be together and have a party and all that, but then there's always a place where you can go around the corner and read and feel connected. You can still hear what's going on. And there's different gradations of that. And what we've found is that's incredibly important in multi-res buildings. People hate, like they think it's a compromise because there's a long corridor where it's almost like, the hotel I'm staying in, a long corridor, there's your front door, you go straight in through there, there's no real space to stop and talk to anybody, it's kind of an awkward space. If you choose to engage with somebody, you have to bring them all the way through your space to the living area. Usually in an apartment it's past the bedrooms. Everybody has a look in the bedrooms, see how messy they are. I don't believe anybody that says they don't have a look, you always have a look. And then you do this big social commitment of bringing them into the space. So things like this where we have this gradation of space, simple things like the front veranda become really important, or a version of the front veranda in apartments. Can you stop near your front door, talk to somebody through that threshold without making a big social commitment to drag them all the way into your house? Sorry. I'll get through this a bit quicker. I love showing that because I get to confess, because if you search that up on the internet, it's actually attributed to me, which makes me feel very clever. It's like the cleverest thing I've never said, but it was actually this guy said it. Reusing materials, I did mean to jump through this a lot quicker, and I will. So reusing materials, so building a home where we try to use as many of the materials on site as possible to reconstruct it, so we reduce the embodied transport carbon down to a minuscule amount. That was fun and really difficult. A lot of our clients living in sort of Fitzroy in the northern suburbs, having kids and their houses are immediately too small for them, so they say, are we meant to do this, like every other idiot, move out to the suburbs and live in a bigger house? And they come to us sort of without a real brief other than, I love my community, can you figure out a creative way of staying here? So Hill House was about creating a lot more built area, but having that built area usable as an outdoor space. So we talked about the Spanish Steps, and we actually created this rolling green hill that you actually inhabit, but the kids can run over as well. And so a lot of these ideas are now informing the rooftops of the Nightingales that we're doing. And multi-generational houses are becoming more and more important. They're super interesting, but unfortunately, I think this trend has started, again, because of the economics of housing affordability. We can't afford to move out, or our parents can't afford to be housed in a quality, elderly housing. Therefore, we need homes that can actually adapt to allow for another generation to live with us. And so something like Charles House is a single house that really is 3 houses as well. So it is actually sort of a medium density development where it's not allowed to happen. In Kew, there's no planning that allows that to happen. I don't know how many you guys do it, but you sort of design these spaces where council will count the number of kitchens, and then they'll just say it's it's multiple dwellings on a lot. So we just don't design, well, we don't draw kitchens, and then later on come and put kitchens in other places so bigger families can live together. But it's really interesting trying to work out the circulation so that people can live together, but also apart, so they don't have to walk on top of each other. So much to talk about in that one, but I'm not going to. Heaps to talk about. We always try to get our spaces to have multiple personalities, so really resistant to putting labels on things, so especially even things like kids' bedrooms. The walls are always able to slide away so they can share spaces. We try to always have corridor spaces that can become part of a bigger space, so that they're not, well, you can see it there, these walls from the bedrooms can all slide away and that corridor can be part of a much bigger play space. Again, that's the kind of thinking that we're now putting into our multi-res buildings, so that the foyer spaces are much more than foyer spaces. They're a small unit of the community spaces. So where we do a green roof for the whole community, on each level, there'll actually be a smaller shared space that's just for the people on that level before they go into their apartments. But all of this was learnt through this single residential work. And all of it just falling on deaf ears whenever we would talk to a developer, because they didn't see how they could sell that. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a car park, that's what sells. That's what did sell until, recently. Our tower house was all about creating a thoroughfare through a private residence, so neighbours could actually walk through somebody's backyard to get from one street to the other. Things like veggie gardens in the front yard. Do a veggie garden in the front yards, because anybody that's got a veggie garden, there's always one goddamn crop that just goes crazy, and you're eating, broad beans for months and months and months. You do it in the front garden, and then people just take or the lemon tree, it just goes mental, and you're constantly going to work with bowls of lemons saying, please take my lemons. Just put it in the front yard, and then the community can share in that. While we were drawing and designing, the kids, to entertain them while we were having the meeting, we said, go over there and draw what you want your house to be. Go away, stop disturbing us, while we sketched out some stuff with the owners, and then they came back and we were confused with the owners, what the hell are we doing? And the kids came back and gave us this, and we just said, yeah, all right, we'll just build your drawings. But yeah, so this is at times, because their house has streets on either side. On the weekends, quite often they leave the gates open. They just let people wander through the neighbours. The neighbours are the ones that feel comfortable doing that. Anybody else would be kind of like, what? Am I allowed? It'd be weird. And a lot of our work is assemblage of things too. This was also the first house where we put a net in a house. Now every house needs to have a net in it. Nightingale 3, we're probably going to put it, where we've got a light well, we're probably going to put a net. I mentioned it once to the community of purchasers for Nightingale 3, and they were like, we're doing that. We're doing it. So a 7-storey high net over a light well. Anyway, townhouse. Yeah, so this is the other end of the street where you can wander through. And again, another house designed so that the family can grow without anybody being on top of each other. You've got these really carefully considered zones where people can collect or they can be apart. So it's really constantly breaking down that binary of what is mine and what is not mine, to what is mine, what is ours, and the different grey areas around that decision making. King built, so this is another one. So we finished this last year and got a couple of good awards for it. This is where, we work with these clients that care about where they live. They had this little empty site here, and we were saying that in Fitzroy, there's, it doesn't seem that dense here, but there's these little pocket parks, which are these great relief. You've got this site where we could actually, for a lot of people, they'd maximise the yield, like build as much as you can, make profit. We were saying you could actually go and add some greenery to this street. You could actually do something that's really enabling for the community by actually, adding not a park, but actually a garden that greens up this area. So why don't we create something in between a home and a garden that gives back to the street? So all these examples of what happens in the area. We worked with them to remake a stable at the back. Again, multi-generational house. This can change over time and become very big once the kids, either the grandparents come in or maybe there's an overlap and the kids start breeding. Anybody that lives in Fitzroy, your kids are never going to buy there. So if you want them to stick around and not move out to the burbs, you've got to somehow create housing within the lot you already own. We like our kids. Oh, well, I like my kids. I'm trying to create this little honeypot where he won't leave. I won't get into it. But anyway, so what's interesting is most people will try to develop the hell out of this spot. Some of the most expensive real estate in Melbourne. And our clients that love the community they're in, we're trying to create greenery, trying to create this garden out to the street. What's crazy is council said, you're underdeveloping the site, we need you to do that. And this is north, this way. So condemning the backyard to a holy shadow, they were saying, we need you to continue the consistency of this, became a real heritage argument, and they just wouldn't listen. So what we end up doing, if you go there now, there's actually the original fence there. I basically said to council, so if we leave the fence there, we can get away with what we want, can't we? And they're like, yeah, all right, well, you're a bunch of idiots, we'll leave the fence. But yeah, again, a lot of these little moments that are translating into the multi-res work we're doing now, the Nightingale work we're doing now, that no developer had any interest in when we talked to them about it. And these shared spaces, this laneway, look how public this is. But the idea is that you can, as long as you allow people to control their level of privacy. So we do a lot of uplines, so you can basically bring it up to whatever height you want, you can still see out. You don't have to pull something all the way down to get complete privacy. As long as somebody has control over their privacy, they will, we're finding, live more publicly, which you see in Europe all the time, which gives you great passive surveillance over the street and into these shared spaces. Nets everywhere. I do enjoy them, but we'll do a sketch design for somebody and we're like, oh, this is here, this is, oh, how exciting is it? And they'll be like, oh, that's really great, where's the net? And I'm like, fuck. It's always got to be a net. Sorry, I didn't realise that. I was in a rush. But, well, this is a really good example. Look at where their bedroom is, right on this street. So this is a street where there's just garage doors all the way along here. And we talk to the clients about they can be the catalyst to actually give this whole street a new life, to actually make it a new frontage rather than the crappy service bin area. But it just requires some bravery. So again, giving them great control over how, there's two lines of curtains through here, great control over how public or private they want to be, and they love it. They're constantly inviting people in when they're in the sticky beak and getting the neighbours pissed. Oh man, I really should have added to batches. In Australia, this is now a holiday home. You guys know how to do shacks and batches so well. Doesn't matter how many New Zealand batches I show to clients, they just don't get the fact that if you can have a fancy house where you live, but you have no opportunity to be a different version of yourself if you don't go to a small place that's barely waterproof, that's connected to the earth. You get to be a different version of yourself. So many people are just asking for this simulacrum of their house. you know, I want this many bathrooms and bedrooms. All you've done is change the view. So we have constant, I lose a lot of shack and, well, holiday home jobs. Because I just sort of say, you know, that'll do, why not? It's big enough, and, you know. So Dorman was one of those where we were told to knock this down, and we were like, well, let's not do that. What do you need? And they just wanted the view, so we just worked to give them the view. Great fun. I steal most of my ideas from Finland, Japan, and New Zealand. Just want you to know that declaration. And this is one we finished this year. So that's less than 10 metres in diameter, that house. And it's getting good sort of coverage at the moment. I'm really proud of this one. It's one of these, you know, a great client, and one of these ones where just execute the original idea. Don't fuck around, don't try and add anything new, just what was the original idea, stay focused. And then having a client that just buys into it and then stands back is what you need, because often they're the ones tacking extra bits on. So this one turned out really well. Again, you guys do kick-ass holiday homes and batches, so it's probably mediocre by your standard, but I'm pretty proud of that one. Okay, so last one before I come full circle back to Nightingale, because this is my house, this one. I call this the mental health house. A lot of the ideas in this, we've tried to translate into our multi-residential, because Australians really see multi-res as a compromise, and that's simply because they've only seen shit apartments. Housing should be good for you. You know, it should be good for your mental health, and a big part of that is how community works with your housing. This one was quite blunt. I just lived in this tiny little dilapidated house with no natural light, and I decided that I'd have the opposite problem when I renovated my house, and I'd put a polycarbonate roof and have too much sunlight, so that I would have to wear sunglasses inside. I would be saturated with vitamin D, and vitamin D has been shown to be really good for your mental health. And the stats, I don't know, the stats might be similar here. You guys are much more chilled, I think, than Australians. We constantly have to put up with assholes in Australia because it's full of Australians. 45% of people end up with a mental health issue. Is it the same here? Everybody going through architecture school is coming out with a mental health issue. 25% of people, look at this UK study, 1/3 of all women studying architecture develop a mental health issue while they're studying. Well, it's a fucking crime. We've got to reinvent the way we teach. Why does it have to be so hostile? And I went far too hard at uni. So, and then I wrote this essay, if anybody's read it, in 2012, which was all about trying to get a work-life balance. In the end of the day, it was all about exploitation in architecture, the architectural profession. You should have a read if you're young. You should have a read if you're old and you're exploiting people. But yeah, this house was all about just creating somewhere where I just wanted to be joyful and turn it up to like 11. Just so joyful that I got just sick of it, Willy Wonka's kind of thing. But also it was an experiment in working at home, because 30% of Australians are now working at home regularly. And for a lot of people that's a negative thing because they're working too much. And I think it could actually be a really positive thing. So the way that this is designed is you've got the shop front, which is just the next space over, down here, and then you've got our living space. Now, living spaces for the average person that works are empty 9 to 5, so you've got this infrastructure there, dining table, couches, kitchen, that's not being used. So what we did was say, well, okay, you know, my son goes to school and we go off to work, and then the office can use that space. And then conversely, if we throw a party or something like that, outside of our office hours, we do that in the office. We just line up all the tables and have a party in there. So it's about really optimising those spaces. AMA's not there anymore. We just outgrew it, unfortunately. Got too big. But it was a really fun experiment in terms of overlap, people working at home, because it became a really big thing in our first Nightingale that Austin Maynard designed, which was Nightingale 3. I think that's it. Okay, Nightingale. So a bunch of us got together, all led by Jeremy at Breathe, just going, somebody's got to do something about this. Government should be doing something about this. I gave a lecture in Delft in the Netherlands in December, and they were like, why why are you doing this? Why isn't government? Jeremy gave a lecture in London a year or so ago, same thing. Why are you doing this? It's like, because nobody else is doing it. So a bunch of us got together, we've got all these problems that I talked about earlier. And Melbourne at one stage, 100 and something years ago, was actually doing it. If you go through De Grave's Lane, you actually see these incredible examples of European-style housing. We actually did it for a short time, and everybody then just retreated and moved out to the burbs. But what we realised, and I bet you, are most people architects or training to be architects? Yeah. How many people are developers? And I've really fucking offended because I'm sorry. So we're all, you know, architects are pretty introspective. We talk to each other a lot, sort of the bubble. Like, why doesn't everybody else think like us? And we spent, you know, a decade or more going, why don't people understand that medium density can be super high quality way of living and actually be far superior to individual homes? And it became a simple case of build it and they will come. Like, quite simply, the lay person wants to go, I get it, I'm looking at it and I'm touching it, good. And that's what happened with the Commons. So when Breathe finished the Commons, all these lay people just went, I want one of those. So straight from out of nothing, suddenly this entire community was like, give me one, when are you building more? And there was no plan to build any more after the Commons. You know, he won every award, many more than that, the Breathe got. And today, you know, almost immediately we had 1,000 people on a wait list saying, can you please build more of these apartments? We now have 8,000 people on a wait list. We've built 20 apartments so far. We've got about 300 under development. But this was a case of you have to build an exemplar version of it to let the layperson go and see it and touch it. But what's most important is the rest of the development community was saying, well, that's cute, that's nice, that's a fringe product that nobody else wants. That's cute, we can't make that stack up financially. What we realised is we had to start churning this stuff out. You have to start producing them because we have the purchases to do it, but you have to make it the new norm. We have to actually have systems change. You have to break the current housing system by producing quantity and basically just beating them at sales, stealing all of their customers because you're showing them that there's a better way of doing things. No car parking, depends where you are. So we're all about good transport solutions. A lot of the sites that we buy, it's difficult or it's wrong to actually add traffic. Tons of bike parking, green travel plans, so making sure that we really embed. The Owners Corporation actually has a fund that gets renewed that actually has Myki cards, so public transport cards. There's this really sophisticated green travel plan to enable people to be able to get around town. There's also the Go-Gets cars. Do you guys have that here? Car sharing. And they're a really great ally of ours. Getting this individual stuff out of apartments so you've got more space. So instead of building big apartments with one of everything, build an economic apartment and then getting things like laundries out of it, just that 1.5 square metres, put it on the rooftop. Like whenever you see, I always find it interesting when you see a developer's render, which there's community across it, and you've got these wankers with lattes, you know, going, this is community, we drink coffee together. Community is a Saturday morning on the rooftop where everybody's washing their jocks together. You really get to know people then. And that stuff hasn't been hidden away. It's the everyday stuff that builds community, not the special events. Natural ventilation, no air conditioning. It's Melbourne. We can get away with it. You guys are probably a bit further north here, so you probably but no air conditioning. This is something we're battling with at the moment, with climate change happening, and we want to be really accessible housing. So elderly people increasingly need, for health reasons, air conditioning. So that's something we're looking at the moment. Nightingale 3 will have energy recovery units through the entire building, incredibly efficient. And the next lot of buildings that we're doing, all of our, sort of the village, which I'll get to, they all have energy recovering units in it, but no traditional air conditioning. And just building what you need and nothing else. So getting rid of, you know, the ceilings and just exposing all the surfaces, getting much more height through there, and just getting rid of chemicals where we can. So you know, just using raw brass, tap fittings and things like that. Chroming is crazy toxic. Just really simple moves that over 20 or 30 apartments makes a huge environmental impact. And always focusing the end game on the purchasers, who we get together as soon as we can. So basically, if we go and secure a site, we then announce it and say who wants to be in this community and get people to put down some money and commit, and then they inform us how they want their community to work. So unlike the current, or the previous model, which was users of the building weren't even part of the discussion, it was all about telling a real estate agent telling a developer what will sell to an overseas investor. The users are central to the decision making. Green roofs, especially, it depends on the area. Like, they're a big investment for us, but in somewhere like Brunswick, which is, you know, post-industrial, to have a green confined community space is fundamental. If we were somewhere else, we might actually lose that price point and make sure we activate the street or the ground. And what's really interesting about the first few buildings is the people that work on the buildings end up buying the buildings. So Nightingale 1's got a bunch of architects that worked on it. It even has the electrician that worked on it, which has become a bit of a problem because some people have been on the wait list for a Nightingale apartment for almost 4 years. And they're like, oh, fuck, you know, you keep on giving it away to people that worked on the building. It's like, well, they did work on the building. But there's become this politics around pecking order and who gets in. Because I don't have a slide about that, I'll jump into that. So we've got a balloting system. So when we announce a project and we say the general products that are in it, people get to ballot for an apartment. So for Nightingale 3, when we had 1,600 people on the wait list, 250 real purchasers, so people that were ready to go, applied for 20 apartments in there. But before we ballot to the general population, we have priority balloting. So if you're an Indigenous Australian or a key service worker like a nurse or we're actually broadening that. If you're a key community contributor, we're calling it. So a school teacher, a nurse or an artist, they're all being pushed further and further out of the suburbs. You get one of the first 5 apartments, and then after that it's to everybody else. And that's the way that we basically sell our apartments. That's driving traditional developers fucking nuts. Like, can't you just give us some of the extras? So, getting rid of this model and just triple bottom line development. Financial sustainability, ecological sustainability, social sustainability. And, as I said before, making it so it can be replicated. So, it's not open source, because that actually takes time to push all this information out, but if somebody asks, we'll tell them. You know, we're as transparent as we can be within the time that we have, and we don't have much time. But if somebody wants to know how to do it, we try to help them. But this is the thing. This is the big idea. It's not a design idea. It's not an architectural design idea. We're redesigning the system. We're redesigning the economics of how you put housing together. So with Nightingale 1, what happened was we had 20 mum and dad investors. A bunch of those were architects. I was one of them. Jeremy and Breathe were the architects. So a bunch of us chipped in some money and said, here you go build a building. So we were helping in other ways, but we actually actively funded another architect, our competitor, to build a building. They fund an architect to work with the community to build their homes. And we don't end up designing 20 separate apartments. We work out what the best, most rational solutions are. We don't want 20 different clients. That would be a friggin' nightmare, as you know. We want them to bond as a community and have their own arguments. So things like bathtubs, it's like, you guys figure it out, and if you can't build a consensus, then we'll just have to think of some other options for those people. It's really fun. It's really healthy. You also get to find out early on who the nutters are, and sometimes they may have to, it's up to the community, you know, find somebody else. And so this is what we do. So we pay the consultants a good fee. The architects get paid a good fee. Nobody's screwing anybody over fees. We don't have a marketing team. We don't have a display suite because we've built some before and people like, you know, each of the architects' works. No real estate agent charging almost as much as an architect just to sell a product that's already sold itself. Construction, building, you know, we're building minimum 7.5 NATHERS rating, you know, complete thermal breaks, incredible glazing, green roofs. We're spending a lot of money on this building, but we're still delivering them under market. So in this area, so in Brunswick, where we've built the first few, the average apartment sales rate is $9,200 a square metre. We're selling ours well under that. The average apartment in Brunswick is fucked. It's so shit. So ones of a similar quality are up around $11,500, $12,000 a square metre. That's like $100,000 more per apartment for an average two better. Because what we're doing is we're working like architects. What do you want? We draw it, we get a price, that's what it costs, we put a fee on top of it. We're not doing what developers do, which is, what do you want? We think the market will bear that, now let's just build it for as cheaply as possible to maximise our profits. So we build a great building, but we sell it for what it costs to build, and that's it. And then any value is returned to the purchaser. It's pretty simple. You want a house, what do you want in it? It's what architects do. We just don't exploit the situation to maximise profits. Does that make sense? And then, just really annoying developers, what we did with Nightingale 1 was there was $109,000 contingency left over. So we just gave it straight to the community. There you go, your apartments cost a little bit less. That's what was left over after the contract was finished. And I love this. These are actually Jeremy's words. We didn't keep it, we didn't buy a yacht or a Range Rover, we gave it back. And I think this was probably the one move where a bunch of the smartest developers in Melbourne changed almost overnight. They realised that the market's shifting already to an owner-occupier market, and they need to deliver something that is better, and they need to tune their profit margins down. And that's the thing, is the capital, so mum and dad investors are all getting returned 15% per annum. So they're getting returned roughly 45% on their, for a 3-year project, 45%. So if they chip in 100K, after 3 years they get back 145K. That's a pretty good return. Yeah? So people are still making money. It's not a charity. But in terms of what we're doing, that's the cost of capital. If we got it from a bank, if we got it from anybody else, you have to pay that interest on it. You can call it profit if you want, but it's the cost of capital. Financial transparency. So, anybody could have asked at the end of the day, what happens to contingency? And if we didn't give it back, somebody would have found it anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fundamental. You are not a Nightingale development unless you have complete financial transparency to the stakeholders that are involved. Fundamentally, so we're not about providing cheap housing either. So the sticker price is really important, but its ongoing affordability is fundamental to good quality, financially sustainable housing. So building an incredibly thermally efficient building just means that you're going to have much lower running costs. We also have an embodied energy network. We're buying green energy in bulk across all buildings at far cheaper rates than you would buy brown coal energy. We're doing the same with the internet as well. We've got craziest internet because we're just buying, we're just putting in embedded networks for internet. So ongoing, low running costs are fundamental in terms of an affordability argument. It's not just the sticker price. And carbon neutral, so there's no gas in these buildings. So if anybody loves cooking with gas, Nightingale's not for you. We're working with the incredible, amazing New Zealand company Fisher and Paykel, and they have got like a Nightingale package, including induction cooktops and all that, which proves, which is a great ally for us. So this is what we're about. We're building homes, not commodities, and they're for owner-occupiers only. So if an investor rocks up, we just say, sorry, we're trying to house people here. We're just trying to deal with some need, a human right. Access to housing is a human right. And we're trying to foster community through doing that. Nightingale 1 finished a year and a bit ago. It's great. Like on Thursday, it's really popular. So what's happened is we run tours on a Thursday. I think it's like $20 a tour, and all of that money, most of that money goes to the owner's corporation. So the people that live in the building that have got strangers walking through the house have got their owner's corporation, sort of subsidised by it. But it becomes an education piece for Nightingale about how you can build good, ethical housing. Building just what you need and nothing more. So keeping it really simple, and then people can come in and plant themselves on it. And that's something we found the purchasers really want. I don't actually want, I really respect Austin Maynard Architects as an architect, but I want you to stand down and just give me a really rational, functional space, and I'll go and paint the walls and get into it that way. They're not hiring us decorators, they're hiring us as people to facilitate their housing choices. Now I've got to talk about this. So, and the other cool thing is that so this is the Commons on one side, Nightingale 1's on the other side of the street, and every now and then they just close down the street, just take over the street and sit in there and have a get-together on the weekend. It's a dead-end street, so it's pretty easy, but they just tell cars to fuck off. Nightingale 2 by 6 Degrees, and then Nightingale 3 by Austin Maynard Architects. The cool thing about this is now landowners are coming to us. So people like Tony have either worked really hard to get their land or they've inherited it. There's a lot of Greek and Italian families in these areas in northern suburbs. We work here mainly because the land's traditionally been cheaper. It's really hard to get elsewhere in Melbourne. But they care about the legacy that their parents have handed on to them, and they've seen other people selling to developers and the most horrible crap has happened to their suburb. So somebody like Tony is actually working with us in Nightingale 3. We haven't bought the land from him. We've licensed it from him to develop his land for him. And he will end up with an apartment and a shop, because he runs the shop Kinky Glinky, and he will pay exactly the same price as everybody else. Completely financially transparent. The Village, this is where 7 architects, Breathe, Hayball, Kennedy Nolan, Claire Cousins, Austin Maynard Architects, Architecture, are building a completely carbon neutral precinct now. So we've bought $18 million worth of land all next to each other in Brunswick, all just the shittiest sheds you've ever seen. And this is where we're trying to really normalise it now. So we're taking huge personal risk to not be just, oh, that's cute, that's different. We want to try and make this the typical way you build homes in Melbourne. So that's Duckett Street, the rail line through here, our site, Claire's. You can see all the different sites that we've purchased. What's interesting is that Wowowa's site there, Melbourne City Council came along and bought their site office and bought the 2 sheds next door and are putting in a park now, simply because of the development that we're putting through is a north-facing park to the community, because one of their mandates is that it's a post-industrial sort of area, is to try and get more green space in there. And so Nightingale as a catalyst has allowed that to happen. And there's also a car park here that we are lobbying will get turned into a park as well. 20% affordable housing. So you talk about running the numbers and trying to make this stuff stack up. We're working with Housing Choices to put 20% affordable housing through there. No Victorian state government that I know of has ever put in limits that high in terms of housing affordability. We're a private enterprise that's doing it. Now they've announced a couple of projects like the gasworks in Victoria. They're now doing 20% affordable housing. 0 cars, but we do have a pod of 20 electric Go-Gets cars, all different types of Go-Gets depending on your needs, that are in a basement underneath the Breathe building, which is this one, and 440 bicycles across the precinct. That's our building, the Austin Maynard one, which is over the road from the Breathe one. Claire's is next door. Fuck, I got through a lot. Thank you for listening.
And that's why we've been dying to get you back. So, and by the way, that was 341 slides.
Sorry.
Now, there will be multiple questions. So, first question.
What's affordable? 3 times the salary, what's that?
What's affordable? That's a great question. I'm trying to use the word less, because it's like, what does affordable mean? Is it the original sticker price? I don't have a definition for you, unfortunately. So it may sound like a cop-out, but we're delivering housing below the market that's of much higher quality, and importantly, the ongoing running costs are far cheaper than any other building. But we don't have a in terms of 20% affordable housing, that is defined by Housing Choices. So we haven't defined that. So a group called Housing Choices, which will buy all of this stock. We've worked really hard from them since Nightingale 1 to set this up. they've defined it as $8,230 a square metre, which is almost $1,000 a square metre under the average in the area. And they will buy those at that rate from us. Every other purchaser is paying a little bit more for their apartment to subsidise that, and we make it absolutely clear. You guys are helping to add 20% affordable housing. And then Housing Choices, who works with state government, will then subsidise rents for those particular assets that they own.
Your construction finance, does it come from a normal bank lender, and are you getting any money from purchases that actually goes into the construction?
Sadly, it's from one of the big four banks, because especially for the village, they're the only ones that are going to lend on that. So we've done a lot of work with ethical lending bodies or Bendigo Bank or people like that, and it's just of a scale that they're not ready for yet. So we do a lot of banking through NAB, but we always have an ethical lender there where possible, so SVA or CIFA, to add mezzanine finance. So we'll get one of the big four banks to carry most of the load, 65% debt to equity. I didn't know any of these terms until I started at Nightingale. I didn't realise how useful things like debt to equity splits were. And then we'll get an ethical lending body to top that up, so we get as much debt to equity sort of split as we can. So we've always got an ethical player in there, and the hope is that then they'll be in a position in one of the future ones to just go, we'll do it, we'll take it all.
So you don't touch purchasers' money until after you finish?
Yeah, sorry, that's a really good question too. We have been working since day one on trying to bring in the Baugruppen model here in Australia. Everybody know what Baugruppen is? It's German for building groups. So, and for decades they've been doing it in Germany. So basically, instead of people putting in a deposit to secure their home, which in Australia it's protected, so you can't use that as funding for the project. And that makes sense because, you know, it puts the money at very real risk. So Baugruppen means that people can put their money in to not only secure a property but also to fund that. So that immediately drops the price of their housing by the 15% that we are paying out to other investors, because they just want lower housing prices. They don't want their 15%. The architecture one, which I didn't, it was the one down the bottom on that village, that is loosely a Baugruppen model, because that was a housing group. There was a bunch of people that had formed 10 years ago to try and do something, and they're working with us. It's loosely a Baugruppen. But they are funding most of their building by themselves, which is really exciting. We've even got now an agreement with the ATO to that people don't have to pay GST on their housing. Like if you're actually creating your own housing, you don't have to pay GST on it. So that immediately, that reduces housing another 10%. And we were working our asses, or the guys, sorry, our employees at Nightingale Housing were working our asses off to try and get that going across the village. Immediately getting it down 10%. But the stumbling block was, back to your first question, the big banks. The big banks are too scared of that. We'll eventually get there though. Baugruppen is the way to really people over their housing choices, because they are the developers then. But with your amazing government, you guys will probably just do it super easily. We've got horrible conservative people we have to go through.
We'll call them Phil tomorrow.
Do it.
Have you found a way to protect affordability longer term, so when people in 5 to 10 years' time want to sell their apartments and they
Great question. Felt like a leading question, but because yes, that's one thing I didn't mention is we've got, it was a covenant on sale, it's now a caveat to the sale. So we run the risk as developers of selling something under market. Somebody buys it, 2 weeks later they sell it and they make 100 grand like that. So we were trying to put a caveat on the original sales of Nightingale 1. So linked to the title of your apartment, you can only sell your apartment for what you paid for it, plus any rises in housing prices in the area. So not rises in apartment prices, because apartment prices fluctuate because they're a commodity. So you get a good uplift in it, but you don't get the freebie, the free kick that we gave you at the start. If you sell, you get the uplift of the raise in housing prices, and you have a 2-month period that you have to offer it back to the Nightingale wait list. If nobody on the wait list buys it, then you can sell it to somebody else. If nobody else wants it, you can go for it, put it to auction if you want. But basically, people on the wait list will jump on it straight away. But that's changed to a caveat on the sale now. The reason we've done that is if it's locked on title, it just can't be lifted off, and we don't really know what's going to happen with this. We may actually be shooting ourselves or shooting those purchasers in the foot. So now that we're making a condition of contract of sale, it means that somebody can come back to us with a real legitimate reason of why that needs to be lifted, and Nightingale Housing can individually lift that from each apartment. But thanks for your question. That's how we're locking in those original savings, because the Commons, so the test pilot, doesn't have that protection. So that's now being sold at almost $11,000 a square metre. Crazy prices. While over the road at Nightingale 1, they're all locked in at the original affordability.
I thought there was a question before.
Yeah, I wanted to ask something similar to what the lady asked, but long-term affordability was something in the US. So the architects themselves are going to overlook this sale, you can monitor that over a period of time, that gets sold to who and make sure that is it architects as such the body or someone else?
Nightingale Housing, which is the social enterprise that all of the original architects have put together, and Jeremy's the CEO of. They are monitoring all of that, and it's it's for 20 years. After 20 years, it's just free for all. But hopefully by then we have created systems change, or helped enable systems change. Sorry.
You can have a go. And just by the way, if you've got a question, just kind of signal me and I can line you up. So you go ahead.
Amidst all of this brilliance that's happening in Melbourne, I heard there was a grouping, an organisation of bankers and developers who just hated what they had seen, and had set up quite an organised anti-co-housing, etc. organisation. Is that taken any?
No, not that I know of. They're super secret organisation there. There are other developers and funders that are changing the way they do business. So there's now another group called the Assemble model. So we're the Nightingale model, and they've just simply gone, oh great, let's do that, and make all the same noises, but they're just a for-profit company. With Nightingale 1, next door, there's a site there that the developer wants cars on their site. They kick the landowner a serious sum of money to take us to VCAT, so a tribunal, to slow down the process. So there was originally, when people didn't, when the industry didn't understand that we're trying to help everybody, trying to help themselves as well, they really tried to kneecap us. But I think once they realised we weren't a threat, we're actually increasing the value of their land, they, chilled out a bit. But I haven't heard of any greater conspiracy. I hope there's not, because we're pretty vulnerable. We're just a bunch of punter architects that are putting it all on the line to try and create something.
We are tending to get industry just starting to co-opt the term co-housing as well. So doing a development but calling it co-housing. So you had a question earlier, Aaron, and anyone else after that, just signal me to here. Right, so go ahead.
For the comments, I'm just curious, how did Nightingale find people, purchasers to join when there was no other things for them to see? Like, how did they convince them that this will work, that they should put their money into this?
The Commons is a different beast. Like Jeremy and a few other architects, it was too risky for me, they were funding it and trying to do it themselves, and then the global financial crisis hit, and the banks refused to lend to almost anything, but especially to a bunch of hippie architects. So he had to go and sell that to the most ethical developer he could find, and they engaged a real estate agent to go and sell the apartments. But Jeremy still used his networks to get good people in the building where he could.
Aaron.
I thought that, another financial question, I thought the graph that you showed is really interesting. And, I'm sorry, the graph that shows the costs and the cost of the project and what the difference is by the time you get to the end. So in there it seems that you know, you're removing the marketing cost, or mostly, I suppose. There still must be a bit of
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
And you're removing cars, which probably saves a bit of money. Do you still find it a struggle to make the whole thing stack up? Because
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's sleepless nights. Like we have all learned. Like I'm up here being a dickhead, bagging developers. It is dangerous. Doing a development is so dangerous, and so we've got an education in risk during this, and it is really hard to make it stack up. So even though we're pulling out all these things and trying to deliver on the market, and I don't know what the building industry is like here, but it's the Wild West in Melbourne. Like they're still really flat out, and tradies are charging whatever they want, so we're getting all these inflated prices. So it is a juggling act, you know, this stuff. So developers do, you know, I understand why they make their money, because they're risking a lot.
That's right. And I mean, the other thing about development is the banks won't lend unless they see the developer making a profit
Yep.
that they can grab if they, you know, if it all turns to.
Yep.
Right.
And so that's become an issue for NAB. Because they don't see profit, they see more contingency. So we have two types of contingency now. So we have the contingency for the project to make sure it's safe, and then we say to the banks, how much more contingency do you want? And we just add that contingency in, and we tell the purchasers, you're signing a sales contract for X, which is a below market, but we have this contingency and we have the bank's contingency. Like that one's pretty safe, all being well, and this one we want to return as much as possible.
There were two more questions.
I just had a question around body corporate rules and agreements. So do the different Nightingale models have do they have sort of an agreement that is different from body corporate rules?
Yeah, they're all the same body corporate rules between each one. And the green travel plan's embedded within that. And we have one body corporate manager that we sort of have across each Nightingale. But at the end of the day, you know, we form these communities of purchasers. It's their call at the end of the day. You know, if they wanted to, they could set up different body corporate structure and all that. All we've got at the end of the day is the threat to pull the brand. It's no longer a Nightingale if you don't think it fits with our ethos.
There was another question here.
I was just wondering if you've been approached yet to take the Nightingale model as a whole to another country yet?
Yeah, I've talked. We've talked to lots of different people from all over the place. Talked to a few architects in Auckland over the years. At the end of the day, you're asking an architect probably zero, as I was, with zero experience in development, to become a developer. And it's taken on significant risk to go out and buy a bit of CBD Auckland, carry that risk and finance it. And at the end of the day, even though everybody loves the energy of it and what we're doing and where we're getting to, it's the amount of work and risk that's required that means that there's a lot of people we've talked to that have just gone, shit, unless you guys are over here doing it for us, we don't feel confident. But I'm not, I guess the thing is, it's ripe and ready for Auckland. We just need the type of person that's willing to roll up their sleeves and carry a risk.
Well, that aside then, if you say as this very ambitious person who's ready to go and they've done their research, do you feel like there's still a bit
we've been surprised at the amount of support we've gotten from the industry. And I don't know whether that's a Melbourne thing. Like, we expected to, you know, for some, especially the gangster developers, like, you know, again, I'm bagging them, but we expected them to really come at us. But the economy's changing, it's changing fast, especially in Australia. And I think they're seeing it as a template where they can de-risk, especially the legislation's changed, so there's very strict limits now on sales to overseas investors. So that's changed the previous model anyway. So we're expecting a lot more hostility, and maybe somebody gives a broken kneecap or something like that, but we're actually kind of delighted, especially the newer generation of developers. They want to do more than just make money. They actually want to contribute something. So it's been good. It's actually really great.
So we've got time for one last question before Aaron asks the ultimate one. So one more question, or should we go straight to Aaron for the last question?
Sorry about that. No, I was just thinking that...
You have to come up the front afterwards.
I've always thought that the ideal model is some of those trusts that you find in England that have built up a swag of money and can afford to finance their own developments and so on. Is that a goal for you? Are you trying to do that?
Yeah, we just think we'll do that ourselves. So there are so many discussions happening in the background. You know, we've got these massive superannuation companies. Some of them have got, you know, like there's Oz Super, which is basically the union's super fund, and they actually have a lot stricter sort of regulations about what they can invest in. So there's been a lot of talk about building a Nightingale fund. So basically a war chest where we can go out and it's available for us, and then we can go and talk to community about what they need in certain places and just mobilise that capital. And that would make things so much easier. Yeah.
I'm interested. Would that then allow renters, because one of the things this your model is completely about ownership, and
yep.
it's not necessarily individually achievable for some people. So if you had there's a fund that could allow that.
Yeah. And some of the superannuation companies are very keen on it. So again, more stuff in the background is a Nightingale rental model, a Nightingale rent to buy model. All that stuff's being worked on. It's just hard building a building. You know what it's like, you're architects, it's hard to build a building. This is like just tenfold. Yeah. And it's amazing how ruthless you get with your own designs when you see these spreadsheets coming through. So that stuff's being worked on, and it's our end goal.
Okay, thank you.